All right, well, right away, this week's episode of Gotham, I have to say, I liked it. I liked it more than most episodes of this show. Really, my mindset going into this show at this point is basically, new episode of Gotham. I guess I better watch it. But the thing with this episode is maybe it was the fact that there was barely any Fish Mooney, barely any Bruce Wayne, or maybe we finally got an instance of a Batman villain. Well, I suppose there's been a few instances of that, but we got an instance of a Batman villain or a future Batman villain being in this show, but at the same time not really sacrificing the integrity of the villain's origin story in the sense that you can actually believe that this villain would still be around and and would go toe to toe with Batman, whereas someone like and I'm not even going to try and think of an example. The point is the Scarecrow was done very well here, or at least the person who would eventually become the Scarecrow and the whole plot line around that, I thought was done fairly well here. And in addition, a lot of the storylines I was more into this time around. This episode was actually one of the best episodes this season, I thought. Not to put too much of a hyperbole on it, but first of all, there's this new killer in town that is seemingly targeting people with severe phobias. This guy has a fear of heights, so he dangles this guy off of a rooftop. This other guy has a fear of pigs, so he basically dresses up. I don't know if this was supposed to be a nod to Professor Pig. Maybe it was, but basically he hires this some other guy to basically kill this guy while he's tied up to a chair and wearing a pig mask while he's doing it. So there's that, and in addition, Fish Mooney gets in contact with Maroni and tells him, Penguin is secretly working for Falcone. So Penguin has to, think fast, think on his feet if he wants to survive. And what else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Yeah, that's really about it. And one thing I really liked about this episode is that it didn't really try to overstuff itself with plot. Yeah, you had characters like Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne and Fish Moody in this episode, but the episode wasn't trying to shoehorn little subplots for each of them into an episode that was already fine with just really two. Yeah, or I'll get to this character in a second, but really there were two main plots. One with the Penguin and his relationship with Maroni, and the other plot line was Gordon and Bullock going after this guy who was targeting people's phobias. Now, yeah, first of all, the most interesting character on the show, the Penguin, really uncharted territory for him in the sense that we are once again seeing him in a scenario where he actually has to think on his feet. And if this actually is an opportunity for some good character building in the sense that he knows how to think on his feet. He knows exactly what to say to save his own skin. And they wouldn't have necessarily gotten to do that if they had kept proceeding along this path that they were seemingly going on, which was, Penguin is in charge, he's rising through the ranks, he has friends basically everywhere. So actually putting him in a very dangerous scenario in the wake of Don Falcone Don Maroni finding out about his true allegiance. Was played very well by Robin Lord Taylor, who I'm still convinced is the best screen Penguin we've seen yet. For all the other weaknesses on this show, Robin Lord Taylor as the Penguin, wow, he is good. But yeah, actually putting Penguin in a very dangerous, very physically dangerous scenario where again he has to talk his way out of it and bargain his way out of it and threaten his way out of it. Seemed very in character for the Penguin, and also kept things from getting too boring on his side of the story. And in addition, Gordon and Bullock going after the phobia killer. I'm just going to call him the phobia killer because he's not the Scarecrow, which already I like. But the thing was, it was sort of a personal story for Bullock, because Bullock, we actually learned what he feared, because he went to this meeting partially because he was romantically interested in this one woman there, and partially because this meeting was his best lead. So he actually shared what he feared. So that was actually fairly interesting, and it was a nice change of pace to see the main focus on the police side of things shift from Gordon to Bullock, at least for one episode. And once again, Gordon and Leslie Tompkins, I am liking their relationship. Yeah, you could argue, well, it's not the most interesting thing on the show, but compared to Gordon and Barbara, then it's like Casablanca, because Gordon and Barbara I was not interested in the slightest. Barbara is just a pretty stupid character, to be honest. She's weak-willed. Not to overly insult a character who we didn't actually see this time around, but the character of Leslie Tompkins is just so much better, and partially that has to do with the script, but a lot of it has to do with Morena Baccarin's natural charisma and charm. I mean, she has a very charming screen presence, and she really gets to exude that during her scenes as Leslie Tompkins, and it helps that her and Ben McKenzie have decent chemistry. So the storyline about Gordon really moving on from Barbara and potentially having something to take his mind off of the corruption of Gotham City, again, I found fairly pleasant, as opposed to all of the controversy that Gordon has stirred up in Gotham up to this point. It's, again, a nice change of pace. There was a fair amount of that this episode. And in addition, the villain. Now, we learn that this guy, Todd, at the focus group, the phobia focus group, he actually hears about these people's phobias and targets them. And when we actually learn why he is doing this at the end of the episode, it made sense in the context of his son eventually becoming the Scarecrow, but in addition, it actually was sort of dementedly fascinating, because it was actually kind of like something out of Hannibal, albeit somewhat more stylish and cartoonish version of that. Again, this is probably one of the most fascinating villains on the show thus far. And yeah, Julian Sands actually played it very well. I actually confused him for David Warner at one point, but Julian Sands, he was very David Warner-esque in this episode. He was as the Scarecrow's dad. And speaking of which, when we actually see Jonathan Crane in the episode, he's the appropriate age, so they're not trying to say like, oh, this kid is going to be the Scarecrow at one point. We should be afraid of this kid because this kid is the villain of the episode. No. And the thing with young Jonathan Crane, he looks exactly like a younger Ralph Bates. Because if you ever seen Ralph Bates in the Hammer horror movies, and you look at this kid, the resemblance is uncanny. And I'm not just talking about the hair. I'm talking about the whole facial structure. It's like a cross between Ralph Bates and Crispin Glover. This is a creepy looking kid. So I guess props. But now you have me wishing that Ralph Bates was still alive so that he could play the Scarecrow. That would be awesome. But I digress. This was a very enjoyable episode, and I was actually surprised. If the show maintains these standards, which are higher than they have been lately, then I can easily see myself getting invested for the rest of the season. Hopefully the next week's episode does not fall apart. However, if they force Nigma into the plot like they have been doing, even in this episode, which was an otherwise good episode except for Nigma, who is very annoying, then this show could potentially be ruined, because Nigma is another character on this show I can't stand, but that's another topic for another day. The important thing was this This episode focused on the good characters and kept the bad ones in the background, even though, admittedly, they did not completely excise them. But, what can you do?